Hi, I'm Laura. This is my first YouTube video ever, and I'm creating this video to share my recent experience with fear. Because through navigating this experience, I really came to realize that fear is just an invitation for us to come back home to ourselves, to that deeper sense of self within, to that place of safety and peace that no external circumstance can touch or take away from us. And each one of us has that place internally. It's just that we're so habitually conditioned to identify with our minds, to identify with our thoughts and emotions, that we have become very disconnected from this internal grounding. So I wanted to share in this video how what had helped me not leverage my experience with fear as a pathway to reconnecting with this place within myself, um, and overcome fear as a result. Just, in case it might be supportive for those of you that are experiencing fear right now in your lives. So, just to give you some context around my personal experience with fear, it kind of started with like waking up at 3 or 4 a.m. in the mornings and just feeling exhausted the next day and really not being able to like sleep any longer than that. And it started happening very subtly for me, and it lasted a whole month. So throughout that month, I was becoming increasingly worried about not getting enough sleep and not feeling rested the next day. And by the end of that month, it became like full on anxiety around sleep itself, where I would, lay awake at night, very hyper aroused state, wondering, am I gonna get sleep tonight, or is it just gonna be another rough night? And how am I gonna, do the things I need to do to survive tomorrow? So I was constantly in this like fight or flight mode that kept me awake during the night. And if I was sleeping less, during that first month, I was sleeping even fewer hours at this point. I was at a certain, point in my journey, I was operating on 0 to 2 hours of sleep for days. And I was just completely exhausted during my day and also anxious at the same time. And I would, cancel plans with friends. I would, um, not feel safe to go anywhere because it didn't feel safe for me to drive on the street. And I would just be in this like state of despair because not only was I not, able to do anything to make sure, to take care of myself, and but also like all the joy and all the um liveliness of living was kind of sucked out of my daily experience because of how exhausted and how fearful I was. And this kind of created a downward spiral for me. Like the more exhausted and the less joy I was experiencing during my day, the more desperate I was for rest, obviously. But the more worried I would become at night about not getting rest. And that would kind of push sleep even further away from me. And I would be again exhausted the next day. So it was just like this downward spiral, um, like saturated with fear. And while all of this was happening, I was also going through a recent breakup of a 4-year relationship. So I was going through a lot of grief at the time. And also, I had a fallout with my mom after having kind of come to the realization just how harmful the environment that she has created for me um like has been all my life. So what I'm trying to say is that the pillars of support that I would usually lean on during rough times were taken away from me while I was experiencing this tremendous amount of fear. And I had never experienced, I had never felt this lonely, this hopeless, and this helpless before in my life. And I usually consider myself as a optimistic, like fun-loving person, but during this experience, I noticed very dark thoughts kind of surfacing within me. I was thinking to myself, if this is how my life was going to look like, if I have to move through my days like a zombie, lifelessly, then I wasn't sure if I was up for that experience. I wasn't sure if I was up for the ride. And having that dark thought just amplified the fear even more. But as much as these thoughts would intrude my mind, there was a deeper knowing inside of me that this wasn't at all the time for me to give up. That it was actually happening for me, not to me, and that it was guiding me to a version of myself that would be more aligned with my highest self. Although I didn't know how that would look like in the moment, I didn't know where I was being led to in the moment. I just felt I could only feel despair. So having that deep knowing inside of me, I started to do research. I started to watch a lot of YouTube videos on not only insomnia, but just how other people would overcome fear in general, and also videos on regulating the nervous system, kind of helping calm it down from that constant hyper aroused state, and also videos on Buddhism. Yeah. And after countless of videos, I kind of came to this understanding that in order for me to overcome insomnia and my fear and anxiety around sleep, the only way was through, meaning that I had to really allow myself to feel through the difficult emotions, and to allow the intrusive thoughts, and really just accept everything that would arise from this difficult experience, rather than suppressing them down, avoiding them, or distracting myself away from them, because that's what I did at the beginning. And it only amplified the fear around sleep even more, because the more I push the fear or anxiety or dark thoughts down, the more I was telling my nervous system that, hey, like, they're not welcome, that they are a threat. And the more my nervous system perceived them as a threat, the more alert it became in defending myself against them. So, I was amplifying, was perpetuating this state of this hyper aroused state, and I was pushing my nervous system deeper into this fight or flight mode. So having had that experience and trusting those that have overcome fear themselves before, I really started to commit to this process of accepting these emotions, or whatever want to arise inside of me, to arise and flow through me, and allow myself to really feel through them. But at first it was very difficult, because it was a lot of trial and error. It was very difficult because it started as an intellectual understanding. And because we're so used to fixing things, fixing problems, and resorting to our mind, or thinking our way through problems, that my mind was at the beginning hijacking this entire process. It was, a process that's honestly meant to be embodied, right? Like we're a process that required my body to feel through the energies of emotions. But at the beginning, it was kind of just like my mind, I was telling myself through the form of thoughts, like, hey, this is an emotion that's coming up right now, get ready to accept it, or don't suppress it, like, feel it, feel your way through. So there was a lot of thinking at the beginning. And because all of my attention was concentrated on the thoughts or what I'm telling myself in my mind, um, I wasn't actually, you know, I wasn't actually feeling the emotions in my body. And as I noticed this, I started to, experiment and try to shift my focus away from the mind and really into my body um, to actually embody that process of acceptance. And if I were to describe the difference between the two, it would be the difference would be intention. Like when we're actually feeling, we're actually, yeah, embodying that process of feeling through the energies, we're feeling through the emotions. There, there's a certain willingness, like intention, that is actually is coming from deep within us, that's guiding us to embrace everything that is. Um, an example would be how this feels like. An example of that would be, imagine walking, in on the street in an early morning, and you're walking past a bakery that's preparing for the day, and you become engulfed by this smell of freshly baked bread. And as you walk through that smell, you try to take everything in, take in as much of it as possible to really immerse yourself in it, to really enjoy it. That that's the feeling of intention. That's the feeling of that willingness, and that's what makes it an actually embodied process of accepting the emotions and thoughts rather than the mind hijacking it. So I started doing that, thankfully, but because it wasn't just my fear around sleep that I had unconsciously pushed down, or this experience was surfacing. It was also the grief around the breakup, and also a deep sense of loneliness and helplessness that both the insomnia and breakup were surfacing. So all of these emotions at the beginning would pour out of me. I would have to take an hour at a time to sit on my couch with a roll of toilet paper by my side, and I would just allow everything to come up, and I would cry, bawl my eyes out. It wasn't pretty cry at all. It was silent, like ugly cry. And I would just allow my body to do whatever the energy is making it to do, like rock back and forth and shake at times. It was just very intense. And I did doubt whether I was doing myself more harm than good, because it was very overwhelming. But again, trusting those that have walked this path before me, I committed to the process. And to my pleasant surprise, much quicker than expected, I would say maybe in 3 to 4 days, I really started to notice a shift in a form of, the emotions were coming up less frequently. And when they did come up, it was much less, the charge around them was much more softened. But I would say the most significant shift I experienced after a few days was this deep sense of connection with myself. And when I say myself in this context, it's different from the self that we have always identified with in our minds. It's that sense of self is coming from a deeper place. It's coming from the soul. And it's so hard for me to explain, but I just felt so much connected to myself and so much more grounded, so much more at peace. I felt safe. I felt present. And although, my sleep patterns didn't shift immediately, but this sense of connection did bring about a total transformation in my relationship to my outer circumstance, in my relationship to the challenges I was experiencing, including insomnia. Because I felt like I was anchored down in this place of stability within myself, I felt so much more confident in navigating life's challenges. I just felt like I had so much more capacity to not just deal with, but even maybe thrive through, whatever outcome was thrown at me. So it was sort of like my sense of self expanded, well, also deepened. And in comparison, the fear around sleep shrunk. And I gradually, and because of this, I gradually kind of stopped caring that much about not sleeping enough or how I was going to feel the next day, because I had total sense of safety within myself and confidence in myself that I would be able to navigate whatever outcome I was faced with. So because of this, my fear dissipated. Not completely, like I'm still working through some residual of it, but my sleep did gradually come back. And this is not the only outcome from this experience. The other outcome is that it feels like I've healed from my breakup. And this is also really hard for me to explain, but the loneliness, the grief just isn't there anymore. And perhaps it's because I've really let them flow out of my nervous system. But at the same time, it feels like there's no more gap in my soul. Like there's no more gap in myself, that I feel totally grounded and present and capable of finding joy by myself. Like I actually really start to enjoy my time alone. It just feels like there's no more sense of emptiness inside of me that I need to fill with somebody else's presence. And I think from a spiritual perspective, right? Like we can look at this as an experience of coming back home to ourselves, or becoming whole in who we are. We're really reconnecting with our true nature. And looking back onto the experience, I think this was the result of truly accepting my emotions and truly letting my emotions flow through my body. Because every time we do so, every time we allow the energies to just flow out, it might feel like it's overwhelming at first, but it's only filling up our body to flow through our body, to flow outside of our system. Every time we do that, the contours of the container, which is that deeper sense of self, which is that conscious awareness that sits beyond our thoughts and emotions, become more felt as the energies create friction against it. Like every time we allow the energies to flow through, we actually become more aware of that, our conscious awareness, more aware of that sense of deep safety and peace within. And also, I think it's because every time we allow the emotions to flow out of our systems, we kind of clear our system of this cloud of emotions that has obscured our deeper sense of self, or created disconnection from that deeper place of grounding. So I think those are the two reasons why um, this embodiment of accepting our emotions or my emotions through this experience really led me to reconnecting with this like conscious no a conscious awareness or this deeper sense of self within. Okay, sorry about that. My dog started barking. I had to pause the video really quick, but I'm almost done and I promise. But there's just one more thing that I think would be important to mention about this process, which is that when we first start to experiment with this process of truly accepting our emotions, truly surrendering to them, and truly allowing them to flow through our bodies, it's really easy for us to fall into that old trap of spiraling in the mind in um, our thoughts, because there will be stories, thoughts, and narratives that come up with the emotions. They're always kind of attached to one another, and it's really easy for us to kind of, get trapped in the stories and trapped in the mind. And whenever we do, we take away our attention from our bodies and from truly feeling through the emotions. So when you notice, the thoughts, or when you notice the thoughts or stories surfacing in the mind, you don't need to resist them at all, because the more you resist them, the more um, amplified they become and the more focused you are on them. So simply accept them, simply allow them. And if you notice yourself start to get trapped inside of them or start to spiral, um, get into this like downward spiral in your mind, you can just gently bring yourself back to your body and bring your attention to how the emotional energies coursing through your body feel like. Because it's through our bodies that we truly connect with that deeper sense of self that's within the soul, that's um, sitting beyond the sense of self that we usually derive from our ego or from our mind. So, and also, um, it's so important for us to be compassionate to ourselves and to be gentle with ourselves through this process, because we're essentially rewiring um, the state of being, or how we've always done things like over our lives. And it's a difficult process. Like, for all our lives, we have become so attached to the mind, so identify with the mind, and to kind of move away from that, move towards our bodies instead, it will take some time, and it is a process, and it is very difficult work. So remember to be compassionate. Don't need to rush yourself at all. You will get there. Like, every time you bring your attention back to your body is a step forward. Like, you rewired something in your system. So just trust that. Like, every time um, you're able to truly embody that acceptance and allowing of your emotions, you're one step closer to reconnecting to that safe place within, and to returning home to yourself, that sense of wholeness and that place of fearing no fear. So yeah, I that's all I wanted to mention. And if you're experiencing fear right now, I really hope that you can take my story as a gentle reminder that you're being invited to expand, you're being invited to feel more whole, and you're being invited to really reconnect with your true nature. Um, so yeah, that's everything I wanted to share today. And thank you so much for sitting through this with me. It was a long video. And hopefully I get to see you soon. Bye.